Welcome to A Mason's Work, the podcast where we review Masonic symbols and illustrate how they can be used to solve problems in everyday life. With your host, Brian Mattox, a proud member of the Craftsman Online Media Network.
So this week, we're reaching the conclusion of our exploration of conscious awareness. We're finishing the framework we've built layer by layer. And if you've been following along, we started at the Tuscan stage, that raw pre-evaluative formation, foundation of pure sensation, right? We moved through the Doric stage of labeling and ego. And now we've also processed that through the Ionic stage of sort of reflective intellect and metacognition. Yesterday, we looked at the Corinthian stage of emotional flourishing and aesthetic meeting. Today, we bring it all together for the final order, the composite. Now, architecturally, the composite is an order is a bit of a hybrid. It takes the scrolls and the volutes of the Ionic, and it marries them with the acanthus leaves of the Corinthian. It's the most sophisticated and integrated of the orders in our mapping of consciousness. The composite in our sort of conversation this week represents integrated agency. So what does that mean for our awareness? This is the point where our Ouroboros, or that snake eating its own tail, finally completes the circle. It's the composite stage where the head, the complex understanding of the world, finally meets the tail, that raw Tuscan sensation. Let's look at our difficult conversation example we used one last time to see how the synthesis works. At the Tuscan level, you kind of felt that heat in your chest, the tingling in your fingers or in your toes. When you had this, we're using a conflict as an example. At the Doric, you've labeled that. You've finally taken all of those sensations and given them a label called frustration. At the Ionic level, you've analyzed the history of why you felt this way. Maybe you felt unheard. What kind of cause and effect relationships were available. At the Corinthian, you appreciated the sort of complex beauty and vulnerability of the conflict you were having. At the composite level, you're aware of all of these things sort of simultaneously. You don't just have the experience, you're the conscious architect of it. In the composite stage, you recognize that the story you told yourself is just that. It's a story. But you also realize that the raw sensation in your chest is the energy that powers that story. You're not stuck in the high drama of the Corinthian ornamentation anymore. You're just not reacting blindly like the Tuscan either. You've achieved this level of mastery where you can sense the data and choose the label that serves your growth. You become the architect of your agency. As always, a quick caveat for our health and safety. This isn't clinical science. We're using these architectural tools as an apparatus for our own internal working as Freemasons. The power of the composite is that it allows us to move through the world with a mutuality of expression. We stop being the tail wagging the dog, where our stories and emotions dictate our reality. Instead, we use this sort of structural understanding, the labels, the analysis, as the means by which we begin to express our true selves. The trap of the previous stages was often losing touch with the foundation or getting lost in the details or falling in love with kind of your own reflection. But in the composite, you're the entire experience. You have the strength of the Tuscan, the clarity of the Doric, the wisdom of the Ionic, and the heart of the Corinthian. Where the head meets the tail, you begin to realize that the pure awareness you had at the very beginning is the same awareness you have now, only now it's decorated with the wisdom of that journey. When we look across the conscious experience, it's also important to understand that this is further complicated by the fact that your level of conscious awareness may vary based on different domains of your life experience. For example, athletes get to a Corinthian level of self-awareness with their physiology very quickly as part of the process of becoming an athlete, and very quickly subjective, but they get to this process as part of becoming an athlete. If you don't have perhaps the necessary requirements in your everyday life, like I don't need to have this level of understanding, it's going to be very difficult to move through it without essentially that external pressure to make that happen. As an athlete, you kind of have to get there from here. Or as a musician, where you have that emotional expression, you have to essentially develop this level of understanding in that domain and get to that Corinthian level of understanding of your own emotional responses in order to better express yourself out in the world. So in each of the various domains, maybe it's mechanical awareness, maybe it's musical awareness, maybe it's emotional content, maybe it's social awareness, you will be at some level of understanding kind of anchored there as part of how you're operating in the world. It's your default kind of approach to solving problems. When you start this process of developing and you find a place where you have made it to that composite understanding where you can be in the present moment and architect your response in a meaningful way that doesn't deny any part of the process, you can then begin to use that understanding to open up other domains of your experience. So you can not be stuck in the Tuscan when it comes to perhaps how you respond to not being able to get some of your needs met. You get to then stop getting so focused on the story you're telling yourself about how you're responding to this other situation in your life. And so as you start working through these and start moving this knowledge from one domain to the other, you help yourself grow from a place of strength to, and resolve some of these other places where you may not have that awareness yet. So as we go through this, we went through this week, you went through a pretty robust journey of understanding essentially how some of these pieces of consciousness kind of fit together and how you get to that place of presence where you can be in the present moment. You can own all of that process, both the evaluation, the creation, and your response, all in synchronous response in the now. We're going to talk in the upcoming weeks about additional ways to leverage that enhanced conscious awareness to create better outcomes for you and the people around you.
The views represented in this podcast are those of the speaker alone and are not representative of any grand or subordinate lodge.
Hi, Brian here. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions or guidance for further episodes you'd like to see or hear, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at amasonswork.com. and we will try and incorporate your suggestions into a future recording. Thanks.
Freemasonry teaches us that the true work is within, a lifelong journey of reflection, discipline, and discovery. At A Mason's Work, we help Masons bring out their best selves through meaningful self-inquiry and symbolic practice. From personal reflection to lodge engagement, we offer tools that turn symbols into action. Visit us at amasonswork.com. The work is within. The time is now.